They didn't plan to fall for you. In fact, they swore they wouldn't. They were careful, guarded, convinced that no one could reach that far inside again. But then you came along. Not loud, not demanding, just there, soft enough to slip through their defenses, real enough to make them forget they even had any. And that's how it began. Not with fireworks, not with grand confessions, but with quiet moments that started to feel like home. They didn't realize they were falling. They only realized they couldn't stop thinking about you. At first, it was small things. The way your laugh lingered in their head, long after you were gone. The way your name started showing up in places it didn't belong. In their notes, in their playlist choices, in their dreams. They told themselves it was nothing, just chemistry, just coincidence. But deep down, their nervous system had already registered you as something safe, something familiar, something they didn't want to lose. It wasn't the way you looked. It was the way you saw. You noticed them, not the version they show the world, but the one behind it. The tiredness in their jokes, the hesitation before they open up, the quiet ache in their voice when they talk about the past. And in that noticing, they felt something shift, because suddenly, they weren't invisible anymore. You didn't rush them. You didn't demand anything. You gave them time. And in a world that keeps rushing, time feels like love. They caught themselves, waiting for your messages, replaying the way you said their name, wondering if you thought of them, the way they thought of you. They'd scroll back through your old texts, as if they were clues, clues to a story they didn't even realize they were already living. They told themselves you were just a friend, just someone they liked talking to. But they started dressing better. When they knew they'd see you, they started rethinking their words, because they suddenly mattered. And when something good happened, you were the first person they wanted to tell. That's not friendship. That's a heart slowly revealing itself. Before the mind can catch up, they began to crave your calm. Your presence had a way of slowing their pulse, grounding their storms. You made silence comfortable, and that's dangerous, because silence is where the truth begins to speak. They'd sit across from you, talking about nothing, but feeling everything. And the more they tried to suppress it, the deeper it sank. Falling in love doesn't always feel like falling. Sometimes it feels like coming back to yourself. After being lost for too long, you didn't ignite chaos. You brought peace. And that's why it confused them. They were used to love that burned, not love that healed. But healing is louder than fire. When you've been hurt enough, they started noticing the small things about you, your habits, your favorite words, the way your eyes flicker when you're thinking, and somewhere between curiosity and comfort, they lost control of the line. They didn't decide to fall. Their body decided for them. Because love isn't always a conscious choice. Sometimes it's recognition, a memory the soul remembers before the brain understands. They might have tried to resist it, tried to pull back, tried to tell themselves that you're not what they want, but their body betrayed them with every glance, every smile, every quiet moment that made them feel too much. And one night, when they were alone, they caught themselves smiling for no reason. Except it wasn't for no reason. It was for you. They didn't tell you any of this. Maybe they still haven't. Because to admit it would mean admitting they've changed. And they don't quite know. When that happened, the shift from you're interesting to you feel like home. But somewhere between the messages, the laughter, the shared silences, they began to build a world around your presence. You became the soft constant in their restless mind. When they talk to others now, it doesn't feel the same. The spark, the rhythm, it's missing. Because connection like yours doesn't happen twice. They might still act normal, They might still tell themselves they can move on easily, but they can't, because you reached the part of them that no one else knew how to touch, the part that stopped believing in magic until you appeared. That's how they fell, not in a moment, but in 1,000 invisible ones, in glances that lasted a beat too long, in goodbyes that felt unfinished, in the strange comfort of knowing you understand them without needing to explain. They fell quietly, unintentionally, completely, and even if they never say it, you'll feel it, because love like that doesn't need words. It just lingers in the way they look at you, in the way they remember you, in the way they still hope. You'll look back. They didn't mean to hide it. They just didn't know what to do with it. Because feelings this deep, they don't come with instructions. And when the heart speaks louder than reason, the mind goes quiet. So they did what people do. When they're scared of what's real, they pretended not to care. They'll talk to you the same way they talk to everyone else. They'll smile, joke, tease, as if nothing inside them has changed. But their body tells the truth. It leans in when you speak. It softens when you laugh. It lingers just a second too long. They'll cross their arms and then uncross them. Look away, then look back. Because every cell in them is at war with their own disguise. They start avoiding you in the most obvious ways. Not because they don't want to see you, but because they want it too much. They'll cancel plans last minute, leave your message on read, take hours to reply, just to feel like they're regaining control. But every time they pull away, their chest tightens. Because distance doesn't fix longing, it just sharpens it. They'll start comparing others to you. Every date, every conversation, every almost. And somehow no one fits. Because you set a standard they can't unsee. They'll tell themselves they're being picky, but deep down, they know the truth. They're searching for your energy. And people who don't have it, they notice everything about you now. Your tone, your mood, even the things you don't say. They sense when you're distant, when you're tired, when something's off, and they'll want to ask, but they won't, because asking makes it obvious, and obvious makes it real. So instead, they'll pretend not to notice. While noticing everything, they start defending you in conversations. When someone misunderstands you, they speak up. When someone doubts you, they feel it like a personal offense. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped being someone they know and became someone they need to protect. They'll tell people you're just a friend, but their tone changes when they say your name. Softer, slower, more careful. Their eyes give them away, because eyes can't lie, not when they've memorized your face. Sometimes they'll pull back, just to see if you'll chase, not out of pride, but out of fear. They need to know they're not the only one feeling this, that they're not standing alone in a love they never meant to fall into. So they'll test your silence to see if it hurts you too. And when you finally reach out, they'll breathe again because your attention feels like oxygen. They'll replay your last conversation over and over, analyzing every word, every pause, every good night, trying to figure out if you felt what they felt. They'll scroll through old photos, looking for meaning in a smile you weren't even thinking about. That's what happens when you fall for someone without realizing it. You start searching for proof of something your heart already knows. They'll try to move on. They'll distract themselves, work harder, stay busy, talk to new people, but nothing hits the same. No one triggers their laughter like you do. No one steadies their soul the way you did. They'll start to understand. You weren't a moment. You were an awakening. And that's not something you can walk away from unmarked. They might even tell themselves they're over you. Say it out loud. Believe it for a while. Until one random night, a song plays, a scent drifts by, a memory resurfaces, and suddenly, You're there again, not as nostalgia, but as ache. Because the truth is, you never left. You live in the spaces between their distractions, and maybe one day they'll see you again in a cafe, on a street, by accident, or fate. They'll smile, pretend everything's casual, but their pulse will betray them. Because love doesn't vanish, it hides, it waits, it breathes quietly until the right moment to surface. And in that moment, everything they tried to bury will come rushing back. Raw, real, undeniable. That's how they fell for you, without even realizing it, and without ever truly recovering from it. Because some connections don't demand recognition to be real. They simply exist, underneath the noise, beyond the logic, in the quiet pull, between two souls that were never strangers. They may never tell you what you meant, but you'll know, because somewhere inside, you felt it too. They didn't see it at first, but loving you, even silently, was changing them, not all at once, but in fragments, in quiet rewiring, in the way their souls started to open again. After being closed for too long, you weren't just someone they fell for. You became a mirror, a reflection of everything they still wanted to believe in. They started speaking softer, listening deeper, feeling more. You woke something up in them, something they thought was gone. That ability to feel again, without flinching, to trust that softness doesn't always lead to pain. And even though they tried to fight it, the change was happening anyway. Your presence made them more aware of their own walls. Every time they wanted to open up, fear whispered, "Remember what happened last time." But your energy didn't demand, it invited. And that's when the healing began. Because sometimes love doesn't arrive to stay, it arrives to rebuild you. They started noticing beauty again, little things, the light through their window, the way the world sounds after rain, the laughter they hadn't heard in years. They began to breathe differently, like they'd been underwater, and finally surfaced. That's what you did. You reminded them that life could still feel good, but healing is messy, and love that heals also exposes the wounds. They began to confront themselves, the ways they'd sabotaged, the reasons they'd run, the fears they'd buried beneath "I'm fine." Because your kindness made their numbness impossible to hide. You saw them, not as broken, but as becoming. And that kind of love, it doesn't just make someone fall, it makes them rise. They started wanting to be better, not to impress you, but because you made them remember they could be. Your presence made them self-aware of their habits, their patterns, their unspoken limits. They began to ask themselves, why do I pull away when I care? Why do I fear being seen? Why do I keep running from what feels right? That's the quiet revolution of real connection. It forces you to face yourself. They caught themselves changing their tone, choosing peace instead of pride, choosing presence instead of distraction, choosing vulnerability, even when it scared them, because somewhere deep down, they wanted to meet you on that same level of truth you offered. You didn't push them there. You drew them there, without even trying. Their friends might have noticed it too. The way they started smiling more, the way they spoke about the future again. They didn't realize it was because of you, but you were in everything, between their words, behind their motivation, underneath their healing. You were the reason they stopped surviving and started living. They started to understand that love doesn't have to be possession. It can simply be transformation. That sometimes a soul meets another, not to claim it, but to awaken it. You didn't belong to them, and they didn't belong to you, but you changed each other anyway. That's the rarest kind of connection, the one that doesn't end. It evolves. They began to carry pieces of you into everything they did. Your phrases slipped into their vocabulary. Your calmness became their response. Your lightness softened their edges. They didn't notice it at first, but they were moving differently now. More aware, more open, more alive. That's what love does. When it's real but unspoken, it lingers as a frequency inside everything you become. Sometimes they'd wonder if you felt it too, if they'd changed you, the way you changed them. And even if they never know for sure, they're grateful because what you gave them wasn't just emotion, it was resurrection. You reminded them that connection doesn't need ownership to be meaningful. That love, in its purest form, is simply the courage to feel again. So, yes, they fell for you without realizing it. But in falling, they rediscovered themselves. They began to understand that love isn't always about getting someone. Sometimes, it's about becoming someone you never thought you could be again. You were the quiet catalyst, the soft turning point, the moment the story shifted from pain to possibility. And no matter what happens next, you'll always be the reason their heart started to heal. They fought it for a long time. The knowing, the wanting, the quiet ache of loving you in the spaces where words never reached. Because admitting it would make it real. And real meant change. And change meant loss. So they stayed in the middle, somewhere between silence and confession, between what they felt and what they allowed themselves to show. But time has a way of softening resistance. And somewhere between the distance and the stillness, they stopped fighting it. They stopped calling it confusion, stopped pretending it was just curiosity, stopped hiding from the fact that you mattered. You always did. Acceptance didn't come like lightning. It came quietly, on a morning when they woke up and realized your name no longer hurt, that they could think of you without breaking, that they could miss you without drowning. That's when they knew they had finally learned to love without needing to own, because not every story is meant to end in forever. Some are meant to awaken you, teach you, reshape you. You were one of those stories, a chapter that will always glow, even after the book is closed. They started remembering you differently, not as the person they lost, but as the person who found them when they'd forgotten who they were. Your memory no longer felt heavy. It felt sacred, like something to keep, not something to erase. They stopped asking, "Why didn't it work?" and started whispering, "Thank you for showing me what love can feel like." They began to understand that sometimes love's purpose isn't to stay, it's to free, to untangle what's been stuck, to remind the heart of what it's still capable of. And you did that without even trying. You reminded them how to feel deeply without needing permission, how to trust softness again, how to see beauty in connection. That doesn't have to last forever to mean something infinite. They no longer stalked your pages, no longer waited for messages that didn't come, no longer reached for the past as proof of their worth. They began to live, to laugh, to breathe, without searching the air for you, to let the world in again, without comparing it to what you once gave them. Because healing isn't forgetting, it's learning to hold love without needing it to hold you back. And yet, sometimes they'll still think of you, in passing, in silence, in a song they once shared. But now it feels gentle, warm, like sunlight through curtains. You're not gone. You've just become part of the landscape of who they are. And that's its own kind of forever. They'll meet other people. They'll fall again. But it'll be different now. Because once you've loved like this, quietly, deeply, without realizing until it's too late, you never go back to shallow. You start searching for meaning, for presence, for souls that speak the same language. And every time they connect again, they'll carry a piece of you into it. The softness, the calm, the depth you taught them to feel. So if you ever wonder whether you made a difference, you did, not because they said it, but because they're still becoming someone who loves better because of you. You were never a mistake. You were a moment of truth, disguised as coincidence, a gentle reminder that love doesn't need a label to be real. It just needs to be felt. And that's how they fell for you, without realizing it, without controlling it, without undoing it. They simply fell. And in that fall, they found themselves. Because love, in its quietest form, isn't about possession. It's about remembrance. And no matter how far the story drifts, there's a place inside them that will always look back and smile, not with regret, but with gratitude for the soul that woke theirs up again.